All right, everybody. My name is Jim Jansen. Welcome to the Equip Cast. I am really excited to share with you our conversation today with Dave Harvey. Dave founded a ministry called Least of My Brethren. You're going to love this conversation. Dave's an ordinary guy who took just a first step into caring for Jesus, hiding in the poor. You're going to hear just the amazing things that have happened as the ministry has grown, as other people have gotten involved, as lives have been changed. You're going to hear very tangibly how deeply impacted people have been with love. But I think even more than that, you're going to hear stories of just how relationship, getting in another person's life, even if that person happens to be poor or homeless, makes all the difference. You're going to love our conversation today. Excited to get started.
Welcome to the Equipcast for the Archdiocese of Omaha. Designed to help leaders to transform their cultures, to embody the pastoral vision, to be one church, encountering Jesus, equipping disciples, and living mercy.
Dave Harvey. Thank you. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being with us. How you doing?
I'm doing great, actually. I'm good. I'm looking forward to today, so I'm enjoying this.
So, Dave, we were talking a little bit before the episode. You know, we first got connected. I had heard about your work with Least of My Brethren, and loved the story as I heard it. And then as we started to talk before the show, I started to hear more of your stories. So I want to jump right in. Dave, tell us a little bit about your faith journey. Like, you know, where'd you first kind of get to know Jesus? What's your day job? Who's Dave Harvey?
Okay, pretty simple, pretty easy. I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. I went to Catholic school, St. John, and then St. Teresa's there. And funny thing is as a Catholic student, I really didn't know my faith much, to be honest with you. And it wasn't until I became a young adult and I started picking up the Bible on my own. It wasn't a forced march. I just wanted to, there's things I was hearing. I just wanted to learn more about it. And I was just really struck by this whole concept of a covenant. And I was getting ready to get married and I'm thinking more and more about it. And on the night before we got married, I remember going back after the rehearsal and I made a covenant with the Lord. I'm deep in prayer, and I just asked for the Lord to promise and protect my marriage and to keep Cheryl safe and healthy. And in return, you know, I'll stay devoted and faithful to the marriage. And that was my first time ever doing something like that. And
wow. And
it really captivated me. And I felt great that night. And I felt, of course, good the next day. And it just kind of took off from there and went. And that's kind of how I got introduced into a deeper faith beyond where I began learning about it in school.
Gosh, that's awesome. I love that. You know, as Catholics, we don't use that language, but you're basically like giving your life to Jesus. It's You had a little altar call there the night before your wedding. That was awesome.
Yeah. It was. And to be honest with you, there's parts of me that wanted to make sure I really understood what I was doing, because I also understood that breaking a covenant could be disastrous. I truly understood that. And it was one of the things that kept me very focused and wanted to make this thing. And 40 years later, you know, we're still going strong in the marriage. So hopefully we both lived up to our ends of the covenant.
That's fantastic. Congratulations. 40 Thanks. Years. Just celebrated 20 myself. So that's fantastic. Now, Dave, Least of My Brethren has become a huge, but significant sized operation. It could be a job, but it's not really your day job. What do you do by day?
Yeah, funny thing you say that. It's not the day job for anybody. We're 100% volunteers. We have no staff. And I used to work at IBM. I spent 31 years there and retired a couple of years ago. I work for a small tech company called Insono. They're out of Chicago, but they've got a big presence here in the Omaha area. And I do that. But the nice thing I love about both those jobs is they really afforded me a lot of flexibility. I can do the things I need to do for the ministry and they're okay with it, which is really great. Occasionally I need to take off on a Friday in midday because there's somebody living outside that needs some help and I might be at work, but they're okay with it. And so it works out awesome. Really, really wonderful. So I have a full-time job, but this other one is pretty much my part-time job. It's 30 hours or so a week, and it's about all I do anymore. I've given up my fishing, my hunting, my woodworking, but everything else I do. And if it's not work or my family, it's this. So it's takes a lot, but we're just doing really well. So we love it.
So give us like the thumbnail sketch of what Least of My Brethren is, and then tell us how you got started.
Well, you know, funny thing is how we got started is nowhere near what it is today. You know, we're constantly listening, and sometimes we're deep into prayer and we understand and hear different things. And so we evolve. So what we're doing today is nowhere near how we started. So our goal, if you would say it this way, our goal is really to try to find those that are outside or living in a car or an abandoned building, try to help them get to a place where they can sustain themselves long-term for a better life. And it would be easy to simply give them food or give them clothing and walk away and be done with it. But we want more than that. And so we start with food and clothing, but then we evolve into tents and sleeping bags. I don't want them to stay outside, but again, I don't want them to be cold and wet and freezing either. So we give them the things to sustain them at the time, and we're back all the time. So we bring food, we bring blessing bags all the time. And once they start to trust us and they begin to kind of come around, we begin to get bicycles to them. And the whole goal of the bicycle is to get them transportation. So hopefully they'll look for work. We give them haircuts to get ready for work. We get them ready, with different clothing and sometimes help them clean up a little bit. We get them bags of recyclable cans that they could turn in for money so that they can pay for things and get going. We're there for the commitment that says, once you get on your feet and you're committed to kind of moving things around, we will work with the other agencies, Heartland Family Services, Together Inc., Community Alliance, all of those to get you into a place. We will fully furnish it for you, 100%. Everything from the bed, the furniture, the kitchenware, everything. And the whole goal is to try to get them a place that they are happy. It feels good. They have a source of pride and they want to work hard to stay. And that's the difference for us right there. A lot of other people used to, help out with just furniture and then they'd walk away. And the reality is that may not be enough. And prior to furniture, people were living on the floor with their sleeping bag, because that's all they had is a backpack and a sleeping bag, and they were living on the floor in an apartment, and they were getting bored. And after a while, a few weeks, they had to go back out and reminisce with old friends, get themselves in trouble again, old temptation, they were evicted. So we're trying to change that for them. So the whole goal here isn't to be a bicycle ministry or to be in a food ministry or a clothing ministry. It's not even to be a furniture ministry. It is, how do we help them through that whole journey, if you will, to get them to a place where they're saying, my life is now wonderful and I'm going to work hard to keep it this way. That's what we're after.
I love that, because I think, just as you share some of the anecdotes of what you do, I'm struck by this beautiful incremental. We start with food and clothing, and then we're just slowly kind of working up the hierarchy of needs. Even just the bicycle, I think for those of us who have never been homeless, which I think is probably the vast majority of our audience, we've never done a survey, the thought of getting yourself from A to B. I remember hearing, it's like, what job application doesn't require you to write down an address? What do you do when you're homeless and you don't have an address?
Yeah, a lot of them will put the address appeal box of one of the shelters, and the shelters are really good about kind of holding things for them. They come by and get things, but you're right, that's a challenge. Now, one of the ladies we met down on the riverfront, my wife began to talk with her, and it was really cool. She was saying, I struggle because every place I go in and I apply for a job, my face is full of soot because I sit around a campfire all night to stay warm.
Yeah.
And it's like, it didn't even dawn on us. So how can we get you baby wipes to clean up? And my wife began to get these little makeup compact things to kind of do things with, with getting yourself ready and things I had never even considered, but they all evolve for us. And now they're part of everything we do. But at the time, every one of those was an incremental step that we had never considered until somebody told us of a need.
Wow. Dave, take us back to the beginning. Like, how did this first get started? Right. This is not what you set out to do. It wasn't, it just kind of, like you said, it just evolved. How did it begin?
Yeah, good question. Going back to maybe 20 years ago, I started doing this thing called Winter Night Watch with Salvation Army. Great group. They deliver food and clothing outside in different trucks throughout the winter. And one night I was out there and handing out bags of food and handing out blankets. And a lady came up and she asked for a blanket, and we had to tell her, we're out of blankets right now, but we still have a hot meal. And she's just started to cry, and we knew something was wrong. So kind of took her aside, and Kelly told us that at the time. She said, I didn't expect to be here, but things have changed in my job. They cut my hours back after Christmas time. I missed a rent payment, and my landlord has put a lock on our door, and he's evicted us. So she said, I took my last $30. I went down to Goodwill. I bought a tent. I'm living along the riverfront. And she says, it's really cold. So I went home and my wife was gone, but I just kind of rummaged through the house and I grabbed everything. I grabbed sleeping bags. We tent a lot. So I grabbed all of our sleeping bags. I figured I could replace them. So I grabbed sleeping bags and blankets and foam mattresses, everything I could find. And I just shoved my car full of it. And I go driving down and I'm on First and Hickory. I'm on a levee down there and there's no lights. And there's parts of me. And by the way, I'll tell you, I say the St. Michael, the Archangel prayer to look after me nearly every day based on where I go sometimes. It's like, I always need this. So I was rest assured that I was pretty safe. I was going to be okay. But I'm sitting down there and I realized I hadn't told my wife. So I called and I left a message and I said, I'm going to be a little bit late. I'm meeting some homeless people down along the river. Don't wait up for me. I'll tell you about it later. And I hung up and I realized
which is what every wife wants to hear.
Yeah. It's like, she's going to kill me. It's like, but I was okay. So I go down there. Kelly was there and we took some things. She was a little standoffish, a little worried, which I get it. It was nighttime. It's her camp. I'm there. I'm a guy. I get it. She was a little protective. So I started figuring some things out and I brought my wife down. That's why her and I started going down and I began to see a change in her because I had my wife with me. Next thing you know, that's how we learned. We started learning about how they use their tarps, how they stay, invisible, if you will, so people aren't seeing them. We started learning things. And then they started introducing us to everybody else. And, probably a year later, she had full-time work. We'd given her bikes. She was pedaling all the way out to Old Mill from the First and Hickory, all the way out to Old Mill for work every day, which is just a fabulous thing. She saved up enough money and she says, I don't have anything. And Cheryl and I went home and we called everybody. We called our family, our friends, our neighbors, who's got a bed, who's got a dresser. And we rented a U-Haul and we moved her in. Well, next thing you know, a bunch of people that we were talking with along the river that we had met said, hey, I heard what you did with her, Kelly. Can you help us out as well? It just kind of grew from there. That's how it started.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I think there's got to be some people who are listening who are wondering, it's like, what's the role? Again, you mentioned some of the shelters, but what's the role of shelters? Why would someone in January in Nebraska go camp along the river when they could maybe go to a shelter?
Yeah, great question. And I didn't know that either, but I began to figure it out really quick. So first off, the shelters are unisex. That's the first thing. So if you are a man and a woman, and you don't want to split apart, you can't go to the shelter. So that's the first part. So they either live in a car or in a building. We've come across some that are in abandoned buildings because they want to stay together. We've got others that they're tired of the shelters. They use the shelters. They'll go there and they'll get food during the day. They'll take a shower, but they go back outside to sleep at night. One of the things that they struggle with is they go to the shelters, they take a shower, something like that, and their backpack is gone, which is their ID. Without an ID, you can't get work anymore. I mean, it's things like that. So it's just a struggle. So people say, I kind of avoid the shelter sometimes. Now, keep in mind, the shelters are fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I love Open Door, Sienna, Stephen Center, Mom's Place, and Micah House, all of them. I love them to pieces. And a lot of the people there, we help all the time. But there's that small percentage of them that says, I just don't want to. And sometimes they're from the military. They've got an independent lifestyle. They know how to live outside and they're okay with that. And they just don't want all the, they call it the craziness.
Sure, because there is a communal life in the shelters, which that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Dave, I remember as we were talking here before we got started, I remember you talking about how much you learned about the people, just what meeting individual homeless people taught you. Talk a little bit more about that. What are homeless people like?
Good question. I would tell you that generally speaking, there's a lot of addiction. It could be alcohol, it could be drugs. And sometimes to feed that addiction, it's a lifestyle that says I've got to steal or things like that in order to feed that lifestyle. So there's that. There's some mental challenges for sure, some mental disabilities. I'll be honest with you, I'm not equipped. I'm not trained. I don't know how to work with that part of it real well. But there's a lot of that's out there. One of the things that amazed me the most is to learn how many people became homeless as a result of a work injury. I have been overwhelmed by that. In other words, they fell off a ladder, broke a leg, couldn't work, they got laid off. There's no job guarantee for them in some of this work. No job guarantees. They couldn't pay their bills and were outside. So I come across that a lot. So sometimes it is just listening, just understanding. Everyone's got a story to tell, and everyone's got a cross to bear. And we all talk about our own burdens, but there are so many burdens that are out there that just put mine to shame. There's a lot of abuse that has happened in someone's life, and a lot of distrust. And sometimes it's hard to turn that around and get someone to trust you. But I will tell you, generally speaking, aside aside from a lot of that, there's a lot of really wonderful people who look forward to seeing you, are looking forward to every week when you're around. They know you by name. They'll pedal fast from 2 blocks away because they see you coming and they want to be there. They're just great people. I think that sometimes we don't see them the way that maybe the Lord sees them. And we have a tendency to look away sometimes. And I think one of my greatest challenges over the course of this is, how do I begin seeing people a little bit differently? It's been something that's been an eye-opener for me. And once I started that, I began to realize they're just like my neighbor. They're just like my kids. Any one of these could be my daughter.
Yeah. When you say that really resonates with my experience. A couple of years ago, I've been blessed numerous times now to go down to Mexico City, work with a ministry called Hope of the Poor. I know you're familiar with Craig and Danny. They've been guests on the podcast. And when I went down there, they do a lot of work with street kids. Kids that live on the street, and there's addictions and abuse. But beyond that, what was clear is like they were just ordinary teenagers.
Yeah.
They were just kids having a hard time. And I remember, again, various degrees of addiction, some that had been kind of miraculously cured of that. But I remember coming down the last night, we were hanging out with them, we were together, and there were 2 extremely striking instances. One of the kids had been bit by a dog because there's a lot of dogs on the street. And so we went, down to the Mexican equivalent of Walgreens, grabbed a bunch of stuff, and we came back thinking that we were going to be dressing this young man's wounds. And I don't remember, we set the stuff down, we got distracted, we kind of turned around, we were attending to something else. And as we turned back around, the kids had grabbed the stuff and had begun to dress his wound themselves. Because they had become a family, and they were just immediately, one of the big kids was sitting on his arm. So he couldn't squirm away, and they were cleaning his wound. And it was clear to see this beautiful compassion and even, dare I say, this kind of family dynamic develop. And then at the end of the night, I was really struck. We're sitting with them and we're having tacos and we're talking. And as we're getting ready to leave, we're walking to the car. They stand up, and as a group, they escort us to the car. Because even though they were homeless, right, it was this beautiful hospitality. Like, thank you for coming to visit. And they saw us to the car, and it was just so striking to me. I can't even quite put into words other than like the care for each other and the hospitality, even in great need and addiction and confusion. It very, very quickly humanized the poor for me.
It's interesting you say that. I don't know if it's appropriate here, but I have a similar story that I'd love to share, okay, if I can. 7-8 years or so ago, it was either Christmas Eve or the night before, and I remember standing in my window. I'm in the warmth of my house, and I'm looking out the window, and it's just blustery outside. It's like -10 with wind chill, and there's probably 8 to 10 inches of snow, and my mind's just going to Mark and 3 other guys that are sharing a tent along the river, or around the railroad tracks over in Council Bluffs, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I'm just fretting about this, thinking that I've grown real close to them. I know them every week. It's like I just don't want anything that bad to happen to them. So I grab a propane heater and a couple of bricks, kind of get it off the ground so it doesn't burn the fabric in the tent. And I go driving out there. And Christmas time, it's dark at 5:30, and I'm out there at 9 o'clock. And I've got to walk the equivalent of about a football field, probably 100 yards or so from the road to get there. And I don't see any tracks in the snow. And that's got me worried. It's like, oh no, they're not mobile. They're not out and about. And I don't see the fire pit, the fire going. And so I'm really worried. And I get back in and I'm calling out, and no one's saying anything. And I kept calling. Pretty soon I shake the tent, and somebody rumbles and says something, and they're all like huddled down under 20 layers of blankets. But I was so glad they were there. So anyway, I set up the heater and I get it going. They're like kids in a candy store. They're giggly, they're sitting up, they're laughing, they're having fun now. It's like they're just joyful again. And I start making my trek back, and I'm across the railroad tracks, and I catch a glimpse of this, on the side of me, and I catch a glimpse, and Mark is sitting out there alongside the end of the tree line. And I yell over at him, "Is everything okay? Did I miss something?" And he responds back to me, "I'm just watching out for you to make sure no one jacks with you." And I'm like, really? I'm tearing up, walking back to the car, thinking, here I am worried about them. And here's a homeless man sitting outside that'll get bundled up to go outside in -10 to make sure that I make it to my car okay. Much like yours, made a line in a procession for you to get to your car. he wanted to make sure I was okay, much like yours did. And
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think people see homeless like that. They just don't see them, and yet they could be very caring, very, very loving people. We just sometimes don't give them the chance.
As you say that, I'm drawn back to a story. You know, the Lord, I think all of us, I mean, you can't be Catholic for long, right? And not have heard Matthew 25.
Sure.
You know, what you do to the least of my brethren, you do to me. Pretty sure that's where your name came from.
2540. Yep.
I think we sometimes miss the gift that the poor are to us. Again, a story I was very grateful. It happened here. Cardinal O'Malley tell a story about Saint Francis, and talks about, you know, most people don't know that when they know Saint Francis, they think about like Saint Francis, you know, animals and stigmata and loved the poor. But what we forget is like he was a rich suburbanite kid. You know, he grew up and he had actually an aversion to the poor. In particular, he was terrified of lepers, understandably so, right? It's this terribly communicable disease. There's no cure for it. And as the Lord was working on his heart, Francis was divided. You know, it's his wealth and his influence and his love for the poor, and he's wrestling back and forth. And there's these lepers that he's just terrified of. And as the story goes, one day he's given this grace when instead of running and turning and going the other way, he runs up to this leper, he embraces him and gives him his cloak. And then he walks away. And it is shortly thereafter that his kind of dramatic conversion story, where he just kind of turns on a dime and totally turns away from wealth. That's where this happens to Francis just a little bit later. As the cardinal told the story, he said, now, let's just be clear. I tell this story not because St. Francis healed the leper. I tell the story because the leper healed Francis, that it was Jesus hiding in the poor, in the leper, that finally gave Francis the grace to break the chains of wealth and comfort that were really enslaving him. I mean, were it not for that leper, there's no St. Francis.
Oh my, I had never heard that part of the story. I never heard that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I not either. And I think it confirms, I mean, that has been my experience as well. You know, I mean, most of our listeners know I did college ministry for many years, and man, there were kids that were really hard to reach. I mean, Jesus is hiding, you know, in the sacraments, he's in the scriptures all over. But if you really wanted to break through to a really hard kid, if you could get them on some sort of a mission trip where they were away from their phone and in contact with Christ hiding in the poor, that would usually do it.
Denver has a nice program called Christ in the City that I've taken a group of kids up to, and it's a week-long engagement to interact with those on the street. And
I love it.
Yeah. I love to watch the response of the kids from day 1 through day 5 and how they change. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's totally transformative.
Yeah.
On this podcast, you know, we're all in with Archbishop Lucas's grand goal, right? That every parish would rediscover its missionary identity and become a missional community. Talk about the service to the poor and how that's affected your community of faith, your parish.
Good question. About 4 years or so ago, I was part of a group, the first group that launched what's called Christ Renews His Parish, or we call it CHIRP. And St. Francis of CC Church from West Des Moines, Iowa, came over here and launched it for us. And it wasn't, and funny thing is, I had been doing this for a long time, and my wife as well, and we never shared it with anybody in the parish. It was something we did on our own. We did after hours, did on the weekend. We kept our head down. We just kind of did our thing. And it wasn't until I actually had to give a witness. I've never had to do anything like that as part of the formation that I shared some work we were doing. And I could not believe a group of men. Women typically are much more compassionate sometimes, if you will, but a group of men who were enamored by this and wanted to be a part of it. I could tell the way that they not only leaned forward, but listened intently, but they wanted to be a part of it, and the way they stopped me. And next thing I know, and this is probably actually 2016 now I think about it, but next thing I know, they've just got some wonderful ideas on how we can take this and make it even better. And they did. Right now, we probably have 75 to 100 volunteers on a given month.
75 to 100 volunteers a month.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. At least Yeah, at least half of them are St. Pat's, and the rest are, from the area. So a lot from St. Wenceslaus, St. John Vianney. St. Patrick's Elkhorn does a fabulous amount with us. 20, 30 people every month, comes out of their group. St. Charles, a lot of different parishes have joined in, and it's not a Catholic group at all. It is very much Christian group. We don't ask you to check a box but it's amazing how many people have gotten involved, and they have made this so much better than we ever could have had it. I got to tell you, like Bill and Celeste Ballmer have taken our street ministry and raised it to an art form beyond where Cheryl and I ever could have done it. You get the Dwayne Benishes and the Bruce Jeffries of the world and everybody else there, and all of a sudden they are organizing groups that are picking up furniture for us so that I don't have to after I get off work. And we have other groups that are loading a truck and someone else found. But point is they just made it better. They got involved. And then they began to rally around it, and they would huddle after we were done on a weekend. And they all wanted to share the story of what they just learned from an individual they talked with.
Yeah.
And so we began sharing this, and pretty soon it just took off. And, living way out in the Gretna area, sometimes, we're not like, some parishes have kind of an identity. And for a while, maybe we didn't have one. I think this kind of became our identity after a while, and so much so that, gosh, there's just so many people involved in it from the parish that and kids and families. It's not just an adult thing at all. And
gosh, that's awesome.
And I absolutely love the way that the parish has come around it. And Father Mike Rui at the time was the pastor when we started this thing, and he just embraced it wholeheartedly. And this has just become a wonderful thing. And I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for St. Patrick's and coming in behind it to make it what it is today, we would still be helping 4 or 5 people a weekend, through food and clothing and tent, versus, we're doing 400 people a month now.
Holy cow, 400 people a month. Dave, talk a little bit talk about the impact and the growth over the years. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's astounding. 400 people a month. Yeah.
So I would tell you that, when we first started, Cheryl and I, we were helping one individual move into an apartment every 6 weeks. And it took us that long to find furniture. We'd rent a U-Haul truck and we'd do that. And we're now doing 8 people a week, as an example. Wow. 8 people a week, 400 people a year into an apartment. This weekend we'll be working on number 1,712 is the apartments we've done.
Wow.
That we've set up fully furnished. So that's 1,700 couches, 1,700 beds, 1,700 dressers, everything, but
how's your back? I feel like there's a chiropractic endorsement coming here.
Yeah, no, there is. But the help makes it all bearable. We have a Facebook group. We're pretty slim on finances. We don't really do that. So we don't spend a lot of money. So we've got a Facebook group because it's free, but there's 6,100 members, 6,000 members in the community that are members of our Facebook group called Lisa My Brethren. And that's awesome. What's the beautiful thing is I could put a request out there and saying, I have a need. I have somebody who has a need for something. Does anybody have this? And in 10 minutes, my prayer's been answered. I'm not kidding. I can never go more than 30 minutes and we have what we need. Always. This is just a fabulous group. We've given 1,651 bicycles. I keep counting them. 1,651 bicycles out.
That's awesome.
With 13,000 people we've fed over the last just 4 months alone since I started keeping track of those. 11,000 of them with clothing. We're coming up on 10,000 blessing bags. Giving out 2,100 tents.
Where do a lot of the physical resource, I'm thinking the bicycles, the tents, where do those come from? Do you have like a little requisition team that's going around the city collecting?
No, it's 100% word of mouth. We have the Facebook group and people join, and it's kind of like one of your buy-sell trade groups, except you're not buying and not selling. You're basically, people join in, they post it and they say, I have a dresser, and you can either drop it off to us at our storage unit or we pick it up. And it all 100% of it is donated. It's all donated goods. Very few things other than underwear and socks are new. For the most part, everything's donated use, and that's great. It's absolutely fine. It's sometimes I think of us as being a bridge, if you will, between those that have and those that need, and sometimes those that have don't know how to get to there. And so we're kind of that conduit sometimes, but the reality is all the treasures that we've got are really somebody else's treasures. They're just entrusting us, and we just get into the hands of those that need it.
Wow. Dave, talk a little bit about the effect. You said 1,700 that have gotten into apartments, and you kind of talked about the progression from like food to a sleeping bag, to a bicycle, to an apartment. Talk about some of those that you've been in a relationship with like for a long time now, right? Like the first couple hundred. How are they doing?
I could tell you about the very first one. Well, so along with Kelly was another gentleman named Dan, and I'm at Winter Night Watch probably 2012 or so. And I'm sitting down there on Park in Leavenworth, and I'm heads down, and I've got a long line of people there waiting for food, and people are walking from all different directions, so they're all waiting to get in line, and I don't think anything of it. And this shiny red car pulls up right next to our vehicle and gets out, and I'm looking down, and this guy walks to the end of the line. And my first thought, I'm ashamed to say, is kind of judging, why does somebody with a car like that need a free meal? I'm thinking that to myself, and I should be doing that. But he gets up to the front of the line, and I turn and I go to hand him a bag, and I look at him, and I just have that smile. He doesn't want the food. He's been driving around for weeks looking for us. He knew we were around somewhere. And it was Dan, he and Kelly. He just wanted to say, years later, things are still going good, full-time work. They're both clean. They're both sober.
Wow.
They can afford a new car now. They've moved. Everything's good. And he gave me one of those hugs that are like, two friends from college who haven't seen each other in 20 years, and you kind of come across each other, and you pick up right where you left off, and it's one of those hugs that just mean more than nearly everything. And he didn't want anything else other than just to say life is good and thanks. And I meant a lot.
Yeah.
Likewise, I'll tell you, there's another gentleman who's living along the riverfront in Council Bluffs, and he was addicted. He had an addiction. He had a bad addiction. And sometimes he was friendly, and sometimes he was under the influence and not so friendly, but we just kept dropping off blessing bags and talking and trying to get him there. And after a while, I kind of lost track of him because he moved away. He wasn't there anymore. And about 4 or 5 years ago, he showed up at one of our breakfasts. He came in, and I looked at him, and I just smiled. Like, I haven't seen him forever. Well, he's got a wife and a little baby in tow. And he decided to clean up. All of this kind of gave him hope, he said. And he decided to clean up. He said, I've got full-time work. He said, I'm working full-time. He says, in fact, I'm working 6 days a week. He says, I've got a family and I've got a baby. And by the way, he joins us every single month that we do a cookout. We do a cookout outside in Council Bluffs for those living outside. Mm-hmm. He joins us every single month, and he's probably one of our greatest evangelists to say, if I could do it, you could do it too.
That's awesome. Dave, as you're talking there, I just can't help but think that like the gospel works. And what I mean by that is, that like love works. I remember, again, when I was down in Mexico City, it didn't happen often. But as we were working with the poor, we were accosted by some people who are like, what are you doing? Don't do that. Don't give them food. They'll just stay. And it was this really interesting phenomenon. It was almost like this out-of-body experience. And I remember thinking to myself, this is not a comfortable life for them. This is not like, you don't say, and particularly these kids, most of them, what was shocking to me was they actually knew where home was. But the reason they were on the streets is the streets were safer than their home lives. And I remember thinking, it's like, it's not like if we could just make the poor and being homeless a little bit less comfortable, then people would say, man, I'm not going to stay here. You're verifying that like compassion and love and timely persistence in helping people changes lives. Like it really changes lives.
It is great to hear you say that. I'm totally aligned with exactly what you're saying there. And by the way, I have to reflect on a little bit more, I think, but much like you say, the leper changed St. Francis, I would tell you that I'm hoping I'm a better person as a result of this because of the way they've changed the way that I respond to my family sometimes and the way I pray as a result. And, the things I pray for now don't really include me anymore like they used to many years ago. I'm not the center of my prayers any longer. So hopefully I become a little bit better of a person myself.
Yeah. Dave, just as we start to kind of close out here, I just want to get just some practical things. So many of our listeners, they have ministries of their own that they volunteer for, that they help lead, just kind of taking a little bit like underneath the hood there. How do you find and invite people into the work?
quite frankly, they find us. Word of mouth. We don't post anything. We have no advertisement other than Facebook group. That's all we do. Now, I will tell you that there are a number of youth leaders that encourage an individual, if they're looking for service hours, to reach out to us. So one, it starts that way. And because a 16-year-old gets involved, pretty soon their parents begin asking, who is that? What are you working with? And they kind of spread
Sure.
it through their family. We get Eagle Scouts, a lot of them will do that. But a lot of it is just, I'll put a post out there and I'll say, we're getting ready to go to Council Bluffs. We have our big luncheon coming up this weekend. We could use 20 volunteers, and within an hour we're booked. We have it. And so
Wow.
when I tell you the strength of this group is because of the beauty of the Omaha community, Omaha Council Bluffs community, excuse me. It really is. I'm totally amazed and impressed by everybody and how they join in. So we get volunteers. Some of them are every single month, and some of them we have volunteers that are every single week.
Wow.
And they've adopted something. And by the way, and that's great. We kind of give it and say, would you like to run with this? Make it better.
Yeah.
And they do. And they make it far better than we ever could have by ourselves.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I'm getting a picture here. There's a lot of different roles. There's a lot of moving pieces that are working together.
Yeah.
How do you get people into the right roles?
We post a list of areas of volunteering, and most people just sign up for what interests them. When somebody doesn't come to us and say, I'm interested in volunteering, and we say, this is where we need you. We don't do it that way. We do it the other way. And that is, these are all the areas we have a need for. What interests you? And so they join us that way. I will tell you that the things we do, throughout the week, we have a retired group of gentlemen who from church, they've all retired, and they get together and they take we have these old used decommissioned Penske trucks, but they're nice, for the area. They do just fine. And they drive around, they pick up things for us, so we don't have to. So they pick them up, and then as a group, talk about the fellowship, they all get together and they have lunch together. Once in a while they go golfing together, but they form their own little group. And it's just wonderful. We have another group that takes care of our storage units and sorts and organizes. We have people that just does kitchenware, and other people that just do bedding, and other people that just do blessing bags, and other people that just do clothing, and other ones that just do food. So we have so many different pockets, if you will. And when I say 75 to 100, every month, that's not an exaggeration. In fact, in the summertime, it's much more than that. In the wintertime, it's 75 to 100 or so. But people just plug into where they want. Sometimes they're there once, and other times, I got this guy, his son, Alex from Scott, he was coming down there because he was doing some hours. Dad joined him one day, like the third time out there. And next thing you know, he's loving it so much. Son's already fulfilled his hours. He's done. And Richard continues to come down every week and join us.
That's great. And, you said that it was a little subtle. I want to make sure people know the way you connect people into the ministry and get them in the right roles is you just make your needs known. I think that's key, because sometimes we're painfully aware of a need we have, but we don't share it, and we don't give people the opportunity to come along and say, hey, I love doing that. I could totally help there. No,
and you're spot on. There are some that involve moving furniture, and that may not be appropriate for others. There's others that just involve, scrambling eggs and helping us get ready and there are people that love doing that.
Yeah.
And they plug into what makes sense for them, and we'll welcome and appreciate everybody wherever they could fit in.
So Dave, as we close here, we've got two more very practical questions here. Okay. Number one, what is in a blessing bag?
Yeah.
And then number two, what would you say to somebody who's listening who wants to just get started, right? They feel this call, but they don't know where to begin. What would you say to them?
Well, okay. So the first question, blessing bag for us is typically a 1-gallon Ziploc baggie. And in there, we stuff it with as much as we can hand out. So it is typically travel size toothpaste, deodorant, and a Bic razor for sure. Toothpaste, those kind of things. Believe it or not, there's not a lot of deodorant being handed out. So that's welcome and by those. It's usually a change of underwear. It's usually a pair of socks. It's a small 8-ounce bottle of water. It's soft granola. And the reason it's soft is a lot of people outside have teeth problem. Yeah. So you got to make something. You can't give them an apple.
Yeah.
Because they just can't bite into it. You got to give them something that works for them. And but we put things in there, and we keep them in our vehicles. And when we pull up to a corner and somebody's needing something, we don't hand them the dollar. We hand them the blessing bag. Mm-hmm. Or if somebody's outside and they join us for lunch and they're living outside, we give these blessing bags out to all of them. Take them. We want you to. So that's the first part. That's what those are. The second part is, how do you get started? I would tell you the first thing is make yourself up about 10 blessing bags. Leave them in your vehicle. When you go to and you see somebody, have one with you when you're walking, especially if you live in the downtown area. You're walking or you see somebody, you pull up next to a corner and hand it to them and say, "My name is Dave." And say, "What's your name?" And the reason I say that is everybody has a tendency to look away from the homeless. Nobody wants to engage. Ask them their first name. And then what makes a real difference, when you see them a couple of days later, call them out by their name. Mm-hmm. "Joey, great to see you again. How are you doing?" It means something to them. They're not invisible. And you'd be surprised. That simple piece will pull you in. It's an easy way to do it. It's non-threatening. It's safe. You're just simply giving somebody a blessing bag and you're saying, "My name is Dave." You don't have to give them the whole thing. You just say, "My name's Dave."
Dave, thank you. That's so fantastic. Dave, where do people go? Tell us about that Facebook group if they want to connect and they want to know more about Least of My Brethren.
If you're on Facebook, you do a search for Least of My Brethren, and you can put Omaha in, because there are a few Least of My Brothers, but they're different kind of groups in the different countries. But Least of My Brethren, not brothers, so Least of My Brethren, and put in Omaha, and you just join the group. And you don't have to do anything. At that point, you just monitor. You'll just see the stories we post. And every so often you'll see us, we will say we have a need for something. And we'll post it out there. And if you happen to have it, just respond back. That's all it takes. Is some people just simply join and look, and others say, "I think I'm going to join one of their breakfasts or lunches." And we get started that way. And then next thing you know, they get pulled in more. And that's okay too. So anyway works. But I tell you, that's the easiest way to do it.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Dave, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks. This has been, our time has gone so fast. It's been such a great conversation.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I enjoy talking when somebody wants to listen and talk about these kind of things, because not a lot of people do.
Yeah, no, I love it. Everybody, if you have enjoyed our conversation today, and I know you have, share this out with someone, go join the Facebook group. Just take that first little step. Go to the grocery store aisle and get a bunch of little bitty deodorants, travel deodorants, and some baggies. You will not be sorry that you did. Yeah. Again, Dave, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I appreciate all of it.